Everybody's mic's on?
Yep.
All right. Yes. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the May 2024 meeting of the Northville City Council. And I see that we have quite a few audience members and you're collected in the back of the room. So if any of you would like to come closer to us, we would love that, but you don't have to. So, but on that note, I would like everyone to stand for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you very much. Before we call the meeting to order, I would like to say casually that thank you all for putting up with me this evening because Mayor Turnbull is not here. I do not want to do this very often and I haven't had to, so bear with me. I'm going to call the meeting to order.
Mayor Turnbull, Mayor Pro Tem Morosky-Brown.
Here.
Councilmember Carter. Here. Councilmember Janetti.
Here.
Councilmember Krenz.
Here.
Thank you for the roll. We have a quorum. So looking to the agenda, everybody have it? I've got it. So on the agenda, we have new business, A through D.
Did you want to switch the order of C and D?
Simply flip them.
Flip them.
Yes,
Yep.
no change in wording, anything.
C and D and the consent agenda?
No, on the new,
business.
we're just doing the agenda now. So A is, and we're going to be shortly going to public comment. So I will mention what they are. So when we go, so one is, we're going to be approving the fiscal year 2024-2025 budget with a resolution. The second is approving updated fees, penalties, and fines schedule. And having a resolution on that. And then C is $100,000 in contingency funds for the consultant services contracts for the River Park. That will become D. And then the current D is awarding professional services agreement consideration of SME, soil and materials engineers. And so the what is on the agenda stays. It's just changing the order of C and D. Does anyone have anything that they would like to change?
Mayor
other
Pro
than that?
Tem, do you also want to add a motion to excuse the absence of Mayor Turnbull?
It is an approved absence. Yes,
Yes.
yes. Do I need anything more than that? Just mentioning it? Okay, all right. So any other changes to the agenda? I'm looking for a
Motion to approve as amended?
Support?
all in favor, say yes.
Yes.
Any nays? No, didn't use the aye. Okay. So the agenda is approved. Going on to, let's see, public comment. So I just mentioned what is on that and what we're having on our regular agenda this evening. So if anybody has comments on something that is not on the agenda, just ask you to limit it to 3 minutes.
Hello. My name is Andrew Daly and I represent the New Victorian Condominium Association as president. My presence here this evening represents no other entity. I'm here to urgently address the severe dust contamination impacting the New Victorian Condominium Association and the broader Northville community, including a preschool directly across from the Northville Downs development site. Despite multiple communications with city government, this critical issue remains unresolved, and recent activities have only worsened the situation. Immediate and decisive action is necessary to protect the health and the well-being of our residents. Fugitive dust mitigation is not discretionary. It is mandated by city, county, state, and federal regulations in addition to our own ordinances. First, let me clarify that our intention is not to prevent, delay, or hinder the Northville Downs development. Its success is vital for our community. However, we cannot overlook the serious and legal issue of fugitive dust contamination. The Northville Downs site is 49 acres with 19 independent structures, making it the second largest private development in Michigan. Fugitive dust is not a minor inconvenience. It is illegal and is a significant health hazard. It can cause respiratory, heart, and cancer-related issues, and it causes damages to property, including heating and air conditioning systems, discoloration, it rots window seals, and more. We, as private property owners in the city of Northville, have the legal right to enjoy our property both inside and outside without questioning the air quality. The lack of proper dust mitigation is unacceptable, especially with forecasted hot, dry, and windy conditions, and no dust mitigation in non-construction hours, including weekends and holidays. This disregard for public health and safety is unacceptable. Currently, only one water truck is being used for dust mitigation at the down site, which is broken down about 50% of the time. Promises of additional water trucks and a fire hose water cannon system have yet to materialize. Today, a single water truck intermittently provided dust mitigation to one demolition site out of 6 ongoing demolition sites today. This is grossly inadequate. Every demolition site is legally required to have water applied while demolition is occurring. An Eagle inspector informed us of this on Friday when he was on site to inspect. When the city of Northville took no actionable measures to enforce appropriate dust mitigation, community members reached out to various agencies, including the EPA, Eagle, and MIOSHA. Each agency agreed first and foremost. The city of Northville, per its own city charter, the demolition agreement the city signed, and the obligation of the city to follow city, county, state, and federal regulations should be taking full and front responsibility. The New Victorian Condominium Association, along with the citizens of Northville, urge and request you, the City Council, to publicly and officially immediately direct the city manager to take any and all necessary steps to hold the developer and their contractors accountable. This matter must be prioritized to safeguard the health, well-being, and comfort of the city of Northville residents. Thank you for your prompt attention to this critical issue.
Thank you. Anyone else? Items not on the agenda.
Hi, I'm Jeff Snyder. By the way, I don't know if you have a sign-up sheet, but there's not much more I can add to Andrew's statement. Actually, I think I feel the same way. We met some of the neighbors in Bealtown met with Joe Gedeke with Eagle on Saturday at it was 2 p.m. or on Friday at 2 p.m. And after having many discussions about asbestos and about other contaminants that are on site, we got around where I asked him the question, well, how much dust should we tolerate, entering, crossing the property line? And he said, oh, 0, right? And following that, what Andrew just said, there was some activity started occurring just behind us, on the south side of the site. So we walked over with Mr. Gedeke and observed, demolition going on without any water in sight. So he said, well, he said, well, I'm going to go and I'm just going to stop that right now. So he drove all around and stopped that at that point. This is happening perpetually. The demolition has been cleverly occurring from the south. Like I had mentioned, it's like, from the south working to the north. So it's out of sight when you're observing just from up here. So I concur with Andrew in the sense that no dust is really tolerable. And our city manager has the authority, to stop it himself. As I know, I've discussed or wrote you guys in an email, he presently is the de facto building official for the city of Northville. So and I know you don't have maybe authority over him at this point in time, but if you can simply just encourage him through some action, to enforce it to the letter of the law, we appreciate it. Thank you.
Thanks. Anyone else in the audience?
Hi, Tim Hassey, 966 Springfield Court. Just came to, I guess, tell you how Peace Day went and was going to thank the mayor for establishing it. He's not here. I'm sure he'll hear about this, but also thank all of you. My understanding is in general, you were in support of his proclamation. So just thank you. And it was awesome, I would say. So in the my favorite moment was working in the park at Ford Field. And at one point, just looking around and John Mayer was playing Waiting on the World to Change. And all these little kids, great song. And all these little kids just flying kites, paint, tie-dye paint everywhere. Henna art was going on and we had at times over, 50 people in the park and just kids having fun. I don't know if they all were there for us or just were at the playground and saw us and came and joined. But it was great. And then another great moment was after we were in the park, we announced a walk to the community center where the speeches were. And, we probably had about 20 to 30 people walk, but I don't know, only like 5 or, maybe a few more adults. They were all just kids and they were just, we had peace flags all in the park and those kids were just like, give me those flags. And they were waving around these flags like with pieces and peace signs and doves on them. And we walked to We Are the World, another great song. And they were just throwing up their peace signs. And then we did John Lennon, All We Are Saying, Give Peace a Chance. And, I tried to state from the beginning, was supposed to be my message. We got to the community center and had some talks. And I think the most, we had a reverend first talk about the relationship between peace and justice. My speaker talking more geopolitics and nuclear war, which, that's one thing I'm big about. So that was super important. But then after that was a rabbi being able to talk to our community, which, obviously, and this was a lot of Muslim and Arab Northville residents who wanted this. And there was just a lot of dialogue back and forth and everyone just saying like, the rabbi, especially, we believe we can live in peace, Jews, Muslims, Arabs, Palestinians all together. Then we had, after that, a Northville resident who is the son of Palestinian immigrants from Gaza and just calling for peace. And then we joined in a little vigil. And I'd just like to say at the last, the Chief Macier and Captain Kruger were just nothing but class and respect. I was a little worried at the end, like there's a couple radical statements from the speakers, but they just came up and they believe in free speech and we're just nothing but positive and smiles. So just thank you for the opportunity and we'll do it next year.
Thank you. Thank you. Oh, another.
Cindy Brazen, 370 Fairbrook. My concern is with the groundbreaking event that took place. We noticed that there was a large presence of police that were there, and I understand that a portion of that is police work, the police that are on duty anyway. But there were more police there than what are normally on duty. So I'm just wondering if that overtime was approved, what's the big deal about a half hour of overtime to put the bollards down in a timely manner? Because that's what we were just told, that they had during those weekend concerts, that they had to wait until Monday to put the bollards down because they couldn't pay somebody overtime. So I'm just wondering what the difference is between overtime for private security as opposed to getting the streets back in order. And it looks like we were just wondering, why did we have to pay city employees to attend Hunter Pastor's private party? If they obviously had to have a special use permit to have that. So why were we made to be the security for it?
Thank you, Cindy. Anybody else in the room? Thank you for those that spoke. Oh.
I just want to reiterate what Andrew and Jeff said. We went to coffee with council on Saturday. We had a 2-hour discussion about the dust mitigation. And our city manager said, we'll have it fixed. I asked him, what are you gonna do? You don't have anything in place. You should have had this done before you started, probably a $350 million project. And nobody thought about the dust. And now they're a month in, it's still a problem. The city manager said, oh, we're gonna have water cannons and everything out this way. I said, what are you gonna do by Monday? Nothing, nothing's changed. So I think it's time we go on record. And I think the city needs to have somebody that watches over this all the time, not here and there. Supposedly we have somebody there, but I haven't seen him. Nobody knows his name. I haven't been told. The mayor told me the guy was there. The mayor also told me there'd be 2 water trucks out there the day after the groundbreaking. Lies. I'm tired of it. It's our health. It's time for you guys to step up to the plate and get this thing run like it's a $350 million project. That's it.
Thank you. Okay, with that, seeing no one else coming to the podium, we had 2 public comments that came in. And I will just read them just because the mayor's done that before. And so I will do that. The first is from Stephanie Bentley. She says she's a Northville resident. I do not know what street she lives on. My name is Stephanie Bailey. As a Northville resident with a family, I love having the road closed during the warmer months. There is ample parking within walking distance, and it's much more enjoyable to walk on Main Street without having to watch for traffic. Please reconsider and close downtown. Thank you. That was one. The other is a bit lengthier, but still within the time, I believe. This is from Lenore Lewandowski. In the city of Northville on Randolph Street. She lives in the historic district and she's writing on that topic. She says, I am submitting this public comment, excuse me, in regards to the historic district guidelines. In late 2022, the HDC applied for a grant to update the 1999 guidelines. The purpose was to update the guidelines and render them user-friendly, help owners understand how to best preserve their historic properties. The new guidelines would also address the use of modern building materials. And while an RFP ran out, only one firm, Kramer Design Group, responded. Lenore was extremely pleased when KDG announced that community engagement meetings would be a part of the process. I commented this during the city council meeting, which awarded their contract. However, I have been greatly disappointed in the community engagement meetings. The first session was at a March 15th, 2023 HDC meeting, where KDG introduced themselves and discussed the scope of the project and schedule. The second meeting is scheduled for June 19th, 2024, more than a year later. I expected more public input during the writing process. If the city wants residents and businesses to comply with the guidelines, their input is necessary. While the new proposed guidelines are posted online, I feel that most people are not aware of them. These guidelines will affect every homeowner and business in the historic district. Consequently, there should be a good amount of public input to make sure the guidelines are user-friendly. Currently, the second and last public engagement meeting is set for 6 to 7 p.m. on June 19th, or 1 hour before the regularly scheduled HDC meeting. At the most recent meeting, it was stated that if a public comment was to go over an hour, it would continue at the end of the meeting, HDC meeting. This could be 2 hours later, given the length of the recent meetings. I feel this is disrespectful to anyone who attends. If they're coming for a meeting, they should be able to continue commenting without interruption. Secondly, I have yet to see anything posted on the city website regarding this meeting and the review of the guidelines. I am asking that KDG or the city send notices to everyone in the historic district, informing them of the public engagement session to review the new guidelines. Again, I feel compliance only works if people have ownership of the guidelines. And that's still within the 3 minutes. And with that, I will close public comment and move on for consideration of approving the consent agenda. George, did you want to go over?
Yep, certainly
Okay.
will.
Thank you.
We have the following items on the consent agenda for council's consideration. Item A, consideration of approving the regular city council meeting minutes from May 6, 2024. Item B, consideration of receiving the bills list report for the week of May 15th, 2024. Item C, consideration of receiving and filing the Northville Youth Network Program Report for April 2024. Item D, consideration of the approval of moving the voting precinct number 2 location from Amerman Elementary School to Hillside Middle School. Item E, consideration of the approval for the contractors' preparation of elevator modifications for Allen Terrace. Item F, consideration of approving the amendment to the funding formula in the interlocal agreement for the 35th District Courts District Control Authority. Those are all the items on the consent agenda for council's consideration.
Okay, is there any suggestions that anything be moved off of the consent agenda or they remain? They can all remain? All right, so I'm looking for a motion to approve the consent agenda as submitted.
So moved.
Support.
Okay, we have a motion properly sorted. All those in support say yes.
Yes.
Aye.
Anybody no? I don't think so. So motion passes. Now we have item number, oh, hold on, I got to turn the page. We have no presentations. We're going to go on to item 7, which is we do have a public hearing tonight. Here comes Sandy. This is for our public hearing related to the FY 2024-2025 budget.
Yeah, so I'm requesting a public hearing to allow public comment on the proposed fiscal year 25 budget, as well as the millage rates proposed to go along with that budget.
So with that, do you want to open a public hearing?
Yes, I open the public hearing. Do I need to do anything more than that?
Nope.
All right. And it,
Up for comment.
yes, does anyone in the audience have any comment on the budget? Either in general or any specific items in the budget? It is an exciting document and it's very, it actually is, but it's just very dense. And so seeing no one wants to make a public comment, I will close the public hearing. Now,
Action of this will come during the business agenda items.
correct, that's what I was gonna,
Yeah,
yeah,
thank you.
so this is gonna be our first item of new business, is a resolution about the budget, and that's where council and George will make some comments on that. So I close the public hearing. We can move on to the next. We have no unfinished business, so it says on the agenda. Anyway, now we'll go to new business. And here comes Sandy for 9A, consideration of approving the fiscal year 2024 budget. And we have a resolution on it.
Yeah, so we do have a resolution. What it is asking you to approve is the fiscal year 25 budget, which was presented to council at the first meeting in April and reviewed in the middle of April. And the millage rates that go along with that related budget in total, let's see, the overall millage rate combined for the operations improvements debt is an overall decrease of about 1%. And then the last piece is part of the resolution that's approving the 6-year capital improvement plan that was reviewed during the budget process as well. There are 3 components to the resolution.
Does anybody have any questions, topics to discuss?
I've got just a quick comment on it. And for once, I'm not going to start asking you questions because I know I have a reputation that's forming when budget discussions come up. I just want to make a general summary of some of the key highlights of the budget because this is a really important thing we're approving. One, I recognize that we need to keep planning for the future, and I do appreciate all of the comments today on the downs and dust mitigation and the importance of solving those. But I want to highlight the budget as, frankly, a great story that I think also impacts all of our residents. Couple key notes. One, our pension plan is funded at 92%. We continue to make progress towards our goal of 120%. You guys should all hold us accountable to hitting that goal and keeping towards it. Obviously, there's market factors, so we're we're going to use that. But the reality is if we get there, that could result in over $1 million in additional funds available to our city in the future by making those investments today and continuing to provide excess payments into that pension fund. I might be the only one more excited about that than the bicentennial in a couple of years, because I think we're getting really close. Second item is the OPEB and retiree healthcare benefits jumped to 158%, which is fantastic because it means we don't need to keep contributing to that.
Correct.
It is secure from a funding perspective. In the budget, it also calls out strategic initiatives, all of which are in the planning phase as we pursue funding or will be starting this summer, thanks to hard work, grants, and donations. And that includes securing the site for the farmers market, public restrooms at Ford Field, Northville Downs River Day lighting and Riverwalk, Fort Griswold playground replacement project, replacing the Ford Field stairway with an ADA accessibility and safe entry, and a Ford Field gateway that's visible to downtown. It also includes Orchard Street reconstruction in 2024, as well as generational improvements to our water infrastructure and a continued focus on long-term solutions for our roads. So recognizing that we're no longer going to have a mill and fill, cover it and claim victory policy. We're going to do what we did at Lake and what we're doing at Orchard and try to really look at what are these conditions of these roads? How do we resolve them for the long term? And then I will also add one more plug that's included in it is that we have the best first responders, police and fire anywhere in the state of Michigan. And if you disagree, come to Coffee with Council. I'd be happy to discuss that one with you as well. And then the part that might be the most important to me in this whole note is we did it while the total city millage for operating debt and improvements is proposed to be 15.2138 mils in 2024 compared to 15.3753 mils in 2023, a decrease as noted earlier of 1.05%. Obviously, we need to be planning for the future and we're going to have conversations on the best ways to handle that. But I just want to take a minute and recognize that there's some good news in this. I know there's a lot of frustration right now. I know there's a lot of emotion on a lot of different topics, but there's also a lot of exciting things that are happening in Northville, and we're making good progress on stabilizing our financials so that we set the town up for the next generation. So thank you, Sandy, for all your work. And I will not this time get into details on, OPEB and our forecast.
I'll add onto that. So John, you always cross off a few of my things. So I'll add some more good news. And we are so fortunate to have Sandy where she is now. To have somebody as capable as she is just an absolute blessing for the residents. And it's not something we talk about because we usually don't talk about and give high fives when things go well. But I really think we ought to. So just as an example of the fiscal stewardship that's in place in this town, our number one priority is fiscal stewardship of our fellow neighbors' money. And so we had $10 million in revenues and expenditures budgeted, and debt service of that was $52,000. So it's 0.53% of our outlays have to do with debt service. Now, if only upper levels of government could follow our lead and do what we do in terms of keeping debt to an absolute minimum. So that is an absolute good news story on that front. And just to build on what Councilmember Carter said is $36 million in roads and water. We're finally now able to get back to the point where we've had decades of, we'll say, deferred maintenance is now being caught up on, and it's going to take time. But where we're going now over the next several years with that is going to be great. And then also I have to just reinforce that as a small city, we might be considered affluent, but we actually have a very small budget. And the multiplier effect of what George and Wendy and others have done on procuring grants in the $10 million plus range is extremely significant. So what we've asked George and the team to do is to set up the engineering on a lot of projects, wherever it is, if it's water or whatever it is. And once you have the engineering done, we can do the shovel-ready projects and be more ready to achieve those grants. And just 3-4 years ago, we never had that. So a lot of what you see right now in our infrastructure has to do with the fact that we never did pursue grants, along with other factors. And just to build on what Councilmember Carter is, we're doing it at a lower millage rate because of the cap than we did last year. Now your taxes go up because of state equalized value, if I'm not mistaken, but the operating millage that we control or we are mandated to control actually went down. So we're doing the absolute best with your money that we can, and I'm very proud of that. So I just want to add on that. So thank you to George and Sandy for keeping the ship straight and having one of the top bond ratings in the state for how we manage our assets.
Yep, and a lot of kudos to the department heads too, because they really watch that bottom line and all.
So we should all be celebrating that. That is good news. And I think hopefully we can all come together and agree that that is a great news story for what's going on in this town.
Laura, did you?
With you guys, I don't need to say much.
I'm gonna
I
just
love
do one
it.
thing.
I appreciate it.
So, yeah, I'm glad Sandy is standing up here because, actually approving a budget annually is one of the most important jobs of a city, of a municipal body, any municipal body. And, overall, even though it's dense, I do read it and I do sort of nitpick on things in terms of within a department, in terms of priorities on streets and things like that. But, overall, it gives me the least heartburn. And that's because number one, it's well constructed. We're in sound financial standing.
Yep.
And it isn't because I've been here 4 years. It was like that long before. So, so really, it doesn't give me heartburn. Now, one thing, and following from what, John and Andrew said, what does give me a worry is our water and sewer. What we've got to invest in water and sewer over the next 5 to 6 years. We might be forced to stretch it out, but it just makes it worse to stretch it out because we need to invest 24 million, not counting the streets.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, the street reconstruction would
Well,
be in addition,
Yep.
right? So it is just a huge amount of money. And, but we need to do it. We need to do it both in the short term and in the long term. So I'm very heartened that it's in good hands, but it does make me like 24 million. That's a lot of money. But it's come home to roost and we have to deal with it. But on that, I'm going, because one thing that's in this budget, we had, what was that? In April, we had a hearing on water and sewer rate study. Water infrastructure and water sewer rate study. At that time, we had several alternatives presented to us on ways we could achieve that, all coming to the same place at the end of a period of time. Some is what I call pull the Band-Aid off now and move forward on that. And others were a graduated increase or decrease because it affects each differently. And on that, what George did, which I don't know that it's in the packet, but
Yep, it's in the packet. We've added it.
you've added it. Oh, great. Okay, so, and what it just does, it takes, so what the budget shows is what city administration was recommending, which of those 4 options they were recommending to us. And they saw all of us shaking our heads at the public hearing. So that is what's in the budget. I'm very comfortable with that. And, but I was grateful that George put together this so we could see it as a memory. Just in summary, what we end up with is some things go up and some things go down. What's changed is fixed and variable costs. So before it was driven by variable costs to the consumer, but most of the costs of the system are fixed. So it was sort of on its head, and that's not good for long-term investment. So George can explain, but you may see like water and sewer rates going down for consumption, but fixed costs are now in place and up, if that makes sense. But George, I'm going to kick it off to you
Yep.
because
And this
that's my
actually,
simple version of it.
this
Very
actually comes
complicated.
more closely under item B, but actually, it was a good request to have this laid out for us. This was talked about, we said during the special work session on water and sewer rates, where we did a deep dive into the infrastructure needs, talked about the financial modeling that council and staff had engaged to look at the rate setting structure. And the recommendation from the consultant and sort of a best practice is to have more fixed rates, a higher proportion of fixed rate, because as you said, the city's water rates are primarily fixed costs. And that means that if there's changes in consumption, the system could be underfunded because of that. So we're proposing any of these alternatives, staff recommendation A, B, and C, which is in the agenda under 9B attached. It's under
Yeah, it is in there.
9B
Yeah.
in the items.
Mhm.
That actually, they all get us to the right direction, but they have a different mix of how you have fixed costs and how many fixed costs you have in terms of the commodity charge.
Yeah.
So that's what it is. Staff recommending recovering 25% fixed costs. And does that,
Yeah, and the reason I brought it up now, because what's in the
Yep.
budget? The
Yep.
budget is the one going with recovers 25% of fixed cost right away. You know,
so
because
it's actually
a
the fee
different-
schedule.
It's in the fees.
fee
So I'm discussing it because Right, but it's, the assumption in the budget is based on this fee schedule. Does that make sense?
It actually exactly is that this,
So when we-
budget reflects an increase in water
Yes.
rates. The specifics are coming under the fee schedule, which.
Which we'll
reflects
get
the
to,
25%.
but I thought just in terms of it affects the budget. So,
Correct, it
yeah,
does.
so,
Those scenarios.
We'll get
are
us to
in the
that.
Budget. So they all bring in the same amount of revenue requirements.
They just do it in different ways.
for the long-term budget, for the
Yes.
5-year, yeah.
Yes.
But it's going to affect year 1 and year
Yes,
2
it will,
differently.
it will affect how the rates of how the people pay the rates, and it will vary based on how people consume water.
Yeah, so
They're-
sorry I moved it up, but it was
Yes.
because it was
Nope.
how that fit into the budget, so.
No problem. May I make a couple of comments on the budget at this point?
Oh, absolutely, all you want.
So I just wanted to, I said this at the start of the budget process, wanted to thank everyone, including council, for, this is your most important task, I believe, in overseeing the city and stewardship of the city, is how you spend the city's resources. Every dollar the city spends has to be appropriated by council. And of course, this document does that. We appreciate your thorough review of the budget document. Hopefully, we've made that a little bit easier. Sandy did a lot of work to streamline the budget document, make it more usable and more readable for the public and for council. Hopefully that has worked, and I think that's a good model going forward. We had the public session where we talked to council about all the specifics of every department, and I think hopefully we've answered your questions on that. So this budget, a lot of work from Sandy, but also a lot of work from all the department heads who keep managing in a very responsible way. We have people who understand the mission and getting things done and being efficient. And I think that that certainly is reflected in this budget document. So proud of the budget document, appreciate Sandy and the department heads' great work, appreciates council's time and commitment to their stewardship of the organization. And with that, available to answer any questions.
Okay. So I'm going to open it for public comment on this. So it's still on the budget, but it's just a different, now it's on the agenda. So I know nobody commented when it was. We can talk about that under rate. I jumped the gun on that, but yeah. So when we get the next item on the agenda, in fact, if you'd like to ask, yeah, we'll talk.
Was that about water rates or about,
Yeah, if it's water rates, overall, it's a system-wide 10% increase, but different customers will be impacted different ways depending on fees.
That's it. So no public comment on this, okay? Well, we can't really answer questions, but you have a comment.
It's sort of a comment
Well,
about.
yeah, you can,
It's about the restroom facility.
just say your name again.
City
I know, we know who you are, but just say.
I'm just curious because I've never seen this anywhere in the world. An adult changing table. I don't know.
Oh, that
what-
is sort of an out
I
there
don't know
question.
what it is, but I can think that it might be misused in the future. So that's just my observation.
Mine wanders. Okay.
I can, if you want me to explain at some point, I can. During my comments, you can explain
Yeah.
later or now, whenever you want.
Yeah, we'll do it at comments.
Yep.
So, yeah. So, with that, I'm looking, if there's no other comment, I'm looking for a motion.
I move that the Northville City, oh, sorry, let me move up. I got excited and jumped down. I move that the Northville City Council adopt the fiscal year 2025 budget resolution as attached.
Support. Okay, we have a motion properly supported. All in favor, say yes.
Yes.
Any opposed? No, motion passes unanimously. Okay, I'm a yes. Thank you. Okay. All right, so that's that. Let's move on to item B, which is, I'm reading consideration of approving the fees, penalties, and fines schedule as amended by adopting the resolution in attachment B, which is. And so this includes the actual fees schedule and then the resolution. I will make one note that if anybody did look, it's very voluminous. And you'll see that the first page of fees shows the current and proposed. And then under the water and sewer, it has current and proposed, and everything else is unchanged. It'd be many pages. That's because there's no change. So it doesn't have current, proposed, no change, right? So just, I had that question. So if somebody else looks at it, they might as well. So on that note, open up, who's gonna
do this one.
Go ahead.
So annually, staff reviews the fee schedule. And the only proposed changes this year are really attributable to the budget documents. Housing Commission, the council had already approved the rent increase, but they had some other smaller changes that they wanted to implement. The commercial and residential solid waste fees are proposed to increase, as well as the water and sewer fees that we just discussed. So those are the only changes to the fee schedule at this time proposed.
Only note I'll have is on the Housing Commission. So for Allen Terrace, the rekey, one general note is we've moved to a key fob system within the building. So that is part of this discussion, and we did discuss it within Housing Commission with the Allen Terrace Residents Council and all participants that were present there. There was support and recognition of the importance of trying to establish a fee structure around replacement keys, as well as a system so that if people want to get a second key for family members that come in and out, or family members or caretakers that come in and out throughout the day. So that's mainly the biggest change on the proposed rekey and replacement key.
Thank you. All right, Sandy, I think, could you speak to maybe in Cliff's Notes version, why the staff recommended the fee schedule they did? Now, in general, unless George, you want to go somewhere else with this, or Sandy, to me, it makes the best economic sense in budgeting that you would align your fixed cost with your fixed revenue and your variable cost with your variable revenue, so you don't create holes in your budget and have to, let's say, displace services that would be expected in other areas. So this seems to be aligned with the recommendation that your fixed cost now is going to be balanced with what your fixed revenue from city would be. Is that generally fair, or is you got a better way to put that than me?
Are you going on water, or are you talking in fees in general?
Water, right now, I'm down on water.
Okay.
Is this not the right time?
No, it is.
Okay.
I just want to understand the question because
Yeah,
I'm.
on water, this is water, this is the water fees. That's the big one on here.
Yeah.
I think.
Yeah, so why are we recommending where we are about?
Yeah, this is your
Yes.
recommendation to put on the record why.
Yes.
Staff recommended that, because that does affect everything.
So when you look at the infrastructure costs, the staffing to fix the water system, the DPW staff, the trucks, equipment they have to use, all of the costs of the pump station, the maintenance costs, electrical costs, all the costs of running the system, including our agreements with Great Lakes Water. The biggest proportion of all of that are fixed. So we pay a steady rate for that, or steady price for that in terms of the whole system. But then what we do is we turn around and we have the ratepayers who pay for all the costs of the system getting about 6% of the fixed cost in their bill, and the rest is all variable. So what this does is it means that the level of consumption figures out how much of the system we can pay for. So if you have a dry season, the consumption may be very good and they may use more water. If you have a very wet season, there may be little consumption, and then you've underfunded your water system. So in order to try to match up the cost of the system to the revenues, you want to move more towards fixed costs, because whether somebody uses water or no water at all, they still have to, the city still has to be prepared or ready to serve that customer. So if, for instance, if a house has a 1-inch water line attached to it, but they never turn the water on, we are prepared and pay for all of the ability to turn the water on. And there's still all those costs associated with it. So they have to pay a percentage of the system to buy into the system, essentially. And that's called a ready to serve rate. And it also, this system does not encourage utilization. So you want to not encourage people to have to use as much water as possible. You want to encourage people to preserve or conserve water. So a system that is all consumption based has kind of a negative effect on people's, you want, our interest then is to have them consume, which is really opposite of what you want. So that's the logic behind going to a recovery of 25%. We are so low at 6 that after working with our consultant, we believed a recovery of a fixed cost of 25 was a good goal to set for the next 5 years, and that we would relook at it again in the future.
Do we have an estimate in terms of what percentage is actually fixed versus variable?
I think we said system-wide, I think 90%, wasn't it, or was it 80 or 5?
It's high. I don't remember the.
I don't remember the exact number, so don't quote me, but it was a lot.
Don't worry,
closer-
it's only being recorded.
Exactly. It's a lot closer to 100 than it is to 25.
On the.
And right now we're at 6 on our billing.
We're at 6.
Yeah, on the sewer side, the amount we pay to Wayne County is 100% fixed. And we have 0% fixed cost in our user rates for the sewer portion.
Yeah, so it gives you a sense that the blended rate, I think, was somewhere in the high, it was 80 or 90%, I believe is what we said. So we're pretty far from that.
And then I know we referenced earlier the 10% increase. When we look at staff recommended alternative A, alternative B, alternative C, they all are a 10% increase, right? So we're not making a decision right now on whether it's 10 or 8 or 5. That's kind of the world we're living in, and welcome to 2024.
You're exactly
Everywhere.
right. And I wanted to clarify that that was an important point that we made during the work session, that we didn't want to act like we were deceiving anybody. We specifically said all of these involve a rate increase that is similar to get us to a certain number. Of course, it's council's determination of accepting this, whether you want to do that or not. But we're saying this solves the problem of reinvesting in the water system, getting the administrative consent order, taking the reservoir out of action. It does all the things we need to do in a responsible way over the next 5 years. And that model shows the 10% increase for the first year being pretty essential.
And is it also, I think it's also important to say that there's a state mandate also in place. This isn't a choice, really.
Well, on
Yep.
In
some
terms
of the investments we have to make.
Some of
Some of the investments are, thank you, are compelled investments.
Yeah, the administrative consent order is just that from Eagle, saying that we have an obligation to take the reservoir out of action, which means it's got to be decommissioned, which means there has to be a pump station put at the bottom of the hill to pump water up to the tower. And that is a significant portion of the 24 million. I think it's about, was it, I'm going to get the wrong number.
I think 6
I
million.
think $6 million is
6 million.
administrative consent. So it is a big project in the first tranche of money that we want to look at, which is 14 million. Almost half of it was for that. So, but they're all important projects. It's the pressure districts to get the pressures back in order, so we don't have low pressure, high pressure throughout the system, which contributes to breakages. It also can contribute to people having worse impacts in terms of their appliances. There's lots of reasons that you want to have regulated pressure. That's how the system was designed. There's removal of a number of lead service lines that are still existing. Looping of water for water quality and for redundancy. So there's a lot of good things that are important for water reliability in this.
For the
And,
long term.
Those would be what modern standards would look like.
Yeah,
correct?
Exactly.
Versus the
turn.
It's our turn to do it. It's very important.
Well, and I mean, I'm not joyous about having a higher water bill because they're already high, right? We all pay high water bills here and elsewhere, but
It's time.
yes, we have to, as I say, pull off the Band-Aid and do it. And the other is, while it's not the full 24 million, we're investing every year in this and we're playing whack-a-mole because we have this non-loop system and we've got this crazy pressure, too much here, less here. We have water mains breaking all the time. And whack-a-mole, you fix one and then another one breaks. And so, because the pressure differential. So good money after bad, this fixed the system. I'm sure we'll still have a water main break. I don't mean that, but it won't be for the same reasons.
You're exactly right that it's kind of a hidden cost of the system, which is these continuous repairs of water main breaks. And also the fact that we have a number of areas that are leaking and we have 16% or 17% leakage of the system. So a number of large diameter water main projects will hopefully bring the water loss down, which everyone pays for.
Right.
And then also have hopefully again, less water main breaks, which again is a cost to the system. So there could be some hidden savings by renewing the system in this way.
George, there was some discussion, sorry, Ann.
No, please.
But there was some discussion during our review of the water infrastructure that we would be, from a citizen standpoint, also getting access to a monitoring solution that would allow us to see what is our consumption, patterns of consumption, alerts if we see a spike, or that you could set it if you go to Florida for the winter and you want to set it that all of a sudden, if you see water pressure, it means a pipe just burst in your house.
We have deployed the wireless monitor system a while back, and now we actually are getting the portal activated for that wireless system. So it had a software upgrade. So I don't believe it's functional now,
but I think we're rolling it out shortly.
Yeah, we have a kickoff meeting, I think Wednesday
Okay.
with the software company.
And we'll be announcing it to people, but you're exactly right. It gives the
You've
residents.
had an announcement plan that I just
Yes,
messed up.
no, we talked about it before. We talked about it during the meeting, so it wasn't, it's good news and it actually gives people the chance to better manage their water consumption. Like you said, when you have a 2-month bill, you could have a toilet in your basement where the flapper is open and it's pouring water continuously, and you know that running sound, and then you flip the handle and you go, uh-oh, how much water did I just lose? That could have been running for a month, and all of a sudden you have an extra $300 water bill because of that. So now you can have this set to consumptions. If it's consuming for a day higher, if it's consuming unusually high, it can send you alerts. So you have to go in there and do a little bit of settings, but it's going to be much better for the consumer to manage their consumption and track it and not wait till the end of 2 months and go, surprise, this is some bad news. Now you can manage it during the time. So it's going to be a great tool for our residents.
Yeah, and that was the DPW staying on top of that, because when we put in the new meters, was it 2 years ago? We wanted it then, but Mike Dominey's, the software was
Not working right.
not working right, and there was questions about the software, but he kept on top of it, and now the software's okay. So now we can launch that. So
We're looking at targeting the fall to possibly switching to a monthly bill as well. So that will also help detect
it's
it.
good. Well, it's good feedback. What? Turn off my irrigation system. All right. I didn't ask for public comment on this.
Not yet.
No, okay. Are we ready for that? Is there any public comment on we've been focusing primarily on the water, but there's a lot of others in there. Does anybody else have a comment on the proposed amendment to the fees, fines, and penalties?
It's up here, office, but I don't want to believe it. We all have to have it like in 10 minutes.
Don't worry.
It's,
Do we? I mean,
are there any other major water infrastructure plans coming in the next couple of years? I thought George had mentioned one and mentioned maybe another potential 10% increase.
We have a list. I don't want to miss it, but there's pressure districts. There's a number of large diameter water mains we're doing. It's the removal of the lead service lines in a number of areas. There is the decommissioning of the water tank, the storage facility that's up on the underground storage facility, and it's the building of a pump station. So there's a lot of projects coming, and the good news is that some of them will hit some road projects and look like a lot like road projects because they'll redo the roads above it. But I can get you the specific list because we put in a program plan.
I mean, I thought you mentioned at a coffee for council, not this time, but one before that
Yep.
might be
Well-
looking at another 10% increase.
And going back to the budget, if you look in the budget under the capital improvement plan, which is a 6-year plan, there is a water sewer section investments in that, and that sort of lays out the phasing by year. And that's, because I put that in a time.
Was it just about the increases or more about projects as well?
I'm asking about increases because.
Oh.
There will be.
A large percent of the population is probably going to be a little set that you see at 10% and then compounded by another 10% in a couple of years.
It's going to be some significant increases. I'd have to go back and look
Water
over
rates
5
are,
years.
That's crazy, right?
Mhm.
Thank you.
Just hearing what's the next project? I'm sorry.
I did too.
Okay, so a closed public comment. Looking for a motion.
I move the Northville City Council amend the fees, fines, and penalty schedule as presented by adopting the resolution at attachment B.
Support?
We have a motion properly supported, all in favor? Or is any of the discussion? I should have asked. We're done, good. Okay, all in favor, say yes.
Yes.
Yes, none opposed, so motion carries unanimously. All right, thanks, Sandy. All right, so now we are moving to the new C, right? So the new C is the SME Professional Services Agreement for geotechnical and structural engineering services for the River Park.
It's Wendy.
Hi, Wendy.
Hello. It's good to see you all again.
You have in front of you a request to approve a professional services agreement with Soils and Materials Testing Incorporated for work consultant services associated with the River Park and the Downs development. This is the fifth such contract you have seen for consultant services since we've begun the process of implementing this project. All of these contracts are being funded through the ARPA funds that the city is receiving from county to assist and offset the costs of some of the park development. And this contract is no different. It is for $141,700, and it's for geotechnical and structural engineering services associated with the river park.
Anybody?
Only question I had is it fair to assume when we say we're providing environmental and geotechnical soils materials testing in the river park? I know it's a different section, but recognizing all of the comments from earlier, that all of the results of that testing will be made available to the public, given the proximity to neighborhoods?
I think this relates to engineering and geotechnical work, not to contamination testing. Is that?
It does say it provides
Okay.
environmental.
Yeah.
Environmental
I
within
think
it.
it's testing in the ground. though,
It's related to the groundwork. It's soil borings and engineering associated with the foundations for the bridges, that sort of thing.
It looks at load of soil, but it doesn't, I think your question is does it look at contamination?
Yeah.
And will we uncover any contamination issues that need to be shared? And I thought this was more of an engineering perspective on soil and constructing on soil and not further testing.
There is some additional breakdown of some of the work that is conducted under this. Things such as the Eagle grant application,
Okay.
which is preparing the application to go to Eagle for related to construction or daylighting of the river. Baseline environmental assessment, riverbed evaluation for permitting, reporting and coordination with some of the other engineering, assisting with the brownfield plan preparation, all of that sort of stuff.
And I think some of this may already have been incurred, similar to what we had with Grisham Metz,
Mhm.
that they had to do this as part of the final site plan, but these are covered under the brownfield plan. So that it's for the river park. So does that,
Mandatory to do this at this level. Good.
I mean, based on what we were reports from brownfield, yeah.
Okay.
In order for it to qualify for funding through the brownfield TIF, it would have to, we have to prove the environmental implications.
Perfect.
And some of this, I believe, does impact what they're actually doing once they begin the construction or deconstruction of the daylighting and reconstruction.
Perfect.
So,
I guess I would just say anything on that baseline testing on the daylighting of the river, I don't see any reason we wouldn't share if we go through
Well,
and say, because I mean, let's be honest, we know there are environmental contaminants. That's why we're doing a brownfield. That's why we're going through the process. So I think it's a good thing to highlight. Here's what we're seeing. Here's the mitigation plans and have that detail available because it's only going to build trust and confidence in how we're
well,
resolving.
in the brownfield plan, and I believe it was also one of the attachments to the demolition contract, they had one of the sheets from the final site plan. And those actually have where they currently have where they could do the borings. Because there was only a couple places near the track they could do it, but then they've already done soil borings along the river where we had the suspected buried tanks. So there've already been, the base environmental assessment, I think, is already done. And it's described in the brownfield plan, which is very dense. So I don't know what would we do, pull it out of that in terms of what's known today?
I'm just saying any additional testing.
Oh,
I'm not trying to
additional.
get- I don't think we
Oh.
need to sit up here and go line by line and try to figure
Yeah,
out
yes, it's-
what we're
that's all-
sharing.
what's
I'm
in-
saying as we go through.
Yeah.
each testing,
I understand.
No, but
number,
yeah,
Understood.
that's, yeah. and I-
Let's share it with the
If
public.
there's some
and let's put a
significant
mitigation
environmental
plan.
issues, you want us to be sure we share.
This
that.
isn't rocket
Absolutely.
science that I'm trying to lay out. I'm
Absolutely.
just
Yeah,
saying, if we find
Nope,
something,
I
let's share
understand.
it.
From this point forward, in addition to what we've already.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah, understood.
It should be.
And I can't see any reason why any of this would be considered proprietary
all
or
No.
anything
public,
like that.
public.
It should all be public.
Yep.
information, so I don't. see-
Absolutely.
If anything, long term, it's resolving environmental issues in our town.
Right.
And that's a good
Yes.
thing, but we gotta make sure we're doing it the right way.
Mhm.
Right, right.
The one item I would like to, and not discuss in detail, but just flag it because I think it's important, is you mentioned this is coming from the ARPA funds. We now have 1 million additional dollars
Yes.
from the ARPA. So we now have new brownfield money. So we have the 2.5 ARPA funds, which must be spent in the River Park parcel, but can cover a lot of different expenses, wide range. The $1 million, and help me with the name of
It's an
it.
Eagle grant.
It's.
Yeah, it's a 1 million, but it's restricted. So even when we had the discussion at Brownfield at our last meeting where we had to pass some resolution, so saying, yeah, we'll take the money. It was mentioned that we hope we can spend the 1 million because it's really specific and has to do with, there's environmental, non-environmental. This is environmental and it's contaminants and it's soil testing. So I think some of this, particularly moving forward, that they're doing, and I don't know if there's any clawback that we can do. So when they submit their bills and anything that can be put on the million should be.
Okay.
Okay.
I'll have to, I'm not familiar with the Eagle grant. Some of them you can't reimburse expenses prior to receiving
Yes.
money. And
Well, that's why I
so,
made that.
yeah, some of this, my guess is a lot of this, took place before that Eagle grant. But one of the things we did have conversations about was it's going to be real important if they're using some of the same consultants for both of those grants to keep those expenses separate.
Mhm.
And so that there's, expenses that go to Brownfield and Eagle grant and expenses that go
Yeah.
to the Wayne County.
Because every penny we can allocate that way is that we can fully utilize the 3.5. We know we're going to use the 2.5. And the brownfield consultants can help because they were actually saying, well, we're probably going to have to do more of this kind of testing and this kind of testing. And they mentioned quite a bit. They even mentioned a couple things that are on potentially on the track parcel that had to do with some things of trucks going in and out. Remember, they were talking about some mitigation
Mhm.
of those trucks going in and out onto center, but on the parcel itself.
Mhm.
So it is not necessarily, if it's covered under the brownfield plan, if it's on the track parcel and it falls under that grant, we may be able to move it over that way.
Okay.
So anyway, that's just the heads up. I want to be able to use every penny and I don't know if we're going to be able to of the million.
And my understanding is that Eagle grant is both testing and mitigation.
Removal.
So then if they find something, remove it.
correct.
And right now they have I don't know that we know the full scope until they actually.
Yeah, and as of, I don't know, and maybe they will, there's still no testing that I know of done on the track itself. If you look at the sheets, it's only at two edges. There's two spots and I believe it's on the northeast part of the oval, just on the outer edge, because they were not allowed at all to do any borings on in the track area where the horses ran because of danger to the horses. So,
Makes sense.
yeah.
And I think that you're right. During the grading, if they have to remove soil, they'll continue to do testing and see what extent of soil they have to remove until they get to a part where they're to clean soil.
Mhm.
And then they stop removing.
Yeah.
And that will all be covered, could all be covered by the Eagle.
Yeah,
grant.
but we don't know if there's any contamination under the track.
Yeah.
Yeah, we just don't, so.
And their plan is that everything is removed. So if they reach a point where they're excavating and it's super deep and they've still got issues, then if they want to do something different, they have to reapply to DEQ and adjust their plans. So they won't know until they get into it.
Covered most of my thoughts. The only things are, as part of the core, eventually grading brings that to the surface. So anything we get that comes out of core might end up on the surface. So I think it's behooves us all to know that where possible. And then the second one was, were there any other bids other than SME here? Or do they have a special skill set to do this?
I don't know if there were any other bills or any other bids.
Or RFQs?
or RFQs. I know that the other professional services contracts that have come here, they have done their due diligence, they being HP, has done their due diligence in identifying the best consultant for this type of work. I don't think SME has any particular experience that other companies don't necessarily. So I can find out what they did, but typically when we've looked at all of the others, they have had an open process for it.
I just want to make sure as things come forward to us that we're picking, I mean, not always the cheapest, but the best.
Yep.
And when we get multiple bids, as long as there's not like some sort of special service that one company provides, it only helps us out long-term with exhaustion of funds that are available.
And the tombstone.
And
Bid my tombstone.
and
Be on my way down.
it would be good at some point to have clarity on this, so I'll say what my understanding is. But that doesn't mean it's accurate, right? So one is that these are professional services contracts, so we had Grisham Metz, not SME, there was others that. G2, and they have been working on preliminary site plan, final site plan, so
They've
their
already been engaged.
depth of knowledge and engagement and anything I've heard, and certainly in their presentations on planning, they are very skilled at what they do. So no sense of incompetence among
Oh,
any
no,
of them,
absolutely,
right?
of course.
So but they're professional services contracts. But what we saw with, for example, the only one we've seen to date is that's when they're actually doing work on the site. So the only one that's come before us to that, I'm not talking about consultant services on the site or testing, is the demolition contract. And while we didn't see it, there was an RFP put out in early January. And the low bidder was selected. So adjusted from there, but still selected. So this is where I don't know. So when we go forward and it's not a professional services contract or, that it's for consulting, it is actually similar to the demo. They're digging out the river. They're doing this. Is that when the
Yeah.
bids have to be?
Tony.
Yeah, sure. So I can just confirm the understandings of the pro tem are wholly accurate. And so when HPN did, these contracts, like we previously talked about, they've already performed a substantial amount of work under them. And so what we did get agreement from the county on as it relates to the expenditure of the ARPA is that we would be able to backdate to the date that they approved the ARPA grant or sub-grant coming to us. And so the obligation with an ARPA grant is that you comply with the local ordinance for competitive bidding, and ours does have an exclusion for these professional services. And so, yeah, so they had already entered into a contract with, I believe it was a different demo crew. And when we looked at it, we did not believe that was consistent with our obligation. So that's when we put it out and it got awarded to Renaissance. So we have made sure that all of them are compliant with our local procurement process.
Yeah. And
That's what I need to hear.
is it going to be anything over 20,000? Is that what it's going to be, Tony? Or what is the threshold?
Yeah, I think that's correct. So long as it's not falling into one of the exceptions.
Yes, yeah, but
There is the next construction related contract is actually out to bid currently. It's for the river daylighting and river site work. And that's been out to bid now for about 3.5 weeks. We'll open bids on that on Friday. And so then that will go through, along with the demolition contract, they went through the same process that all of our construction contracts. go through.
and I'll be grateful that it's less messy because it's only the River Park parcel. The mess with the demo was, it was River Park, it was track, and it was, we're gonna throw in scope 1, which includes not stuff.
Yeah.
But this one will be clean, right? Or is clean?
In terms of contract?
Well,
Yes,
it be, meaning it's just the River Park
just the
parcel.
River Park parcel.
Yeah.
Yes. Yep.
Less headache.
And it'll spend all of the ARPA money times 3.
Mhm.
So,
Oh, yeah.
which the city will not be responsible for. Once the ARPA money is gone, then that is all the developer's
Mhm.
responsibility.
Well,
Last sentence there.
Pardon?
Said that was an important last sentence there.
Well, the developer's responsible for it, and then once the properties are, there's taxes coming in. they're repaid. They're reimbursed, but it's done and then they're reimbursed. So that's well after, right? So up until, so there's an incentive for them to get it built in taxable properties.
Correct.
Okay. Any public, I'll open it to public comment. Any public comment on this?
Antonia Genetti, and I am just gonna question a few things. How much are the taxpayers committed to do this river walk? How much money are we committed to? Do we have a price on that?
Well, I can say that it's right around, is it 18?
Well, I think you have to separate current taxpayers from future taxpayers.
Yes,
It's an
correct.
Important clarification.
Yes.
Okay,
So current taxpayers, not
okay,
future tax. So the way a brownfield TIF works, it's future taxes for those new homes and commercial buildings.
okay. Asking ain't getting. We were promised a spreadsheet to tell us where the grants were, how much grants we have. Does anyone have that? Is it located on any website? Could I find it?
The whole you mean the brownfield plan that reimburses for the river park?
Well, are you looking for all the grants we've received
All the
across the
grants.
board?
Across the board.
So I know we have that because.
It's done on the
yeah.
website. I looked this morning.
We can get it for you.
Mhm.
Okay, I'd like to see the grants and I also would like to know how much a taxpayer's committed. That's it.
Okay.
Sorry, guys.
Thank you, Tony.
Have another minute.
She didn't use all her time.
Oh, that's okay.
Getting a little aggressive up here.
Staying out of that one. Okay, any other public comments? Okay,
Maybe I can ask you this question. There are already borings that are occurring on the south part of the river location. Like they started, is that part of this contract or part? Because they seem to be on like a grid, like northern and south. You know,
I have the.
Which is good news.
I don't know. off the top of my head.
because from my understanding, I spoke to the project manager from Eagle a while back, and he indicated that that there really weren't many borings. There was no soil investigations to speak of, I think, along the entire river. They were waiting for there were a few, but I think there were a couple of trial areas, but they were waiting for the barns, the asphalt to be pulled out, the barns to remove before they do that. And that everything's subject to change once they begin the excavation. And Councilmember Carter, I appreciate your request for some transparency on these things, this process. And but I want to remind council that there was a HP and city meeting a few months ago where we were promised very similar transparency with regard to health and safety issues regarding the site. And we've seen maybe little to none so far. Was that something that was going to be after the process? We were going to be able to see those documents, or I believe it was meant to be probably straight out of the gate, right? So I hope at least moving forward for this process, when you speak about transparency, that council can make sure, hopefully follow up and make sure that promises are turned into actual action. Okay. Thank you very much.
thank you. Any other public comment? No, I'm going to close public comment. I'm looking for a motion.
I move that City Council approve the professional services agreement with SME Inc. in the amount of $141,700 for geotechnical and structural engineering services associated with the river park.
Support.
We have a motion properly supported. All in favor, any discussion? Okay. All in favor, say yes.
Yes.
Yes, any nays? No. Motion passes unanimously, so that's it. So now we're gonna go on to the new D. Is that Wendy again? Okay, so then the new D was, hold on, get it here. That was consideration of a proposed $100,000 in contingency funds for consultant service contracts associated with the River Park Council.
Okay, this is in front of you because as I mentioned, there are currently 5 consultant services contracts associated with the River Park. And they total a pretty hefty amount of money at this point in time. And one of the challenges with a lot of these consultant services contracts is that it's really difficult to define an exact scope when you're doing the original proposal. And so what happens sometimes is then there needs to be some adjustments in that scope as they get further into the design and construction. And so, but there isn't really any good way to predict which aspects of the project are going to need some additional scope. As an example, the soil borings that we were just talking about. When you do a soil boring, you have to go down as far as you have to go to hit solid soil. That could be 20 feet, it could be 50 feet. That's going to change the cost of that soil boring. So a consultant might estimate, 10 soil borings at 20 feet each, and they might have to do 30 soil borings at, 100 feet each. And so that's going to change the scope considerably. So what we're finding is that we're getting requests for scope adjustments on these different contracts. Each one of those requests is vetted by both HP and myself. And if necessary, I double check it back with OHM if it's not something that I have knowledge of myself. And I have received a couple of requests for scope adjustments and pushed back on them just to confirm that they were valid requests. But what I'm asking for here is for City Council to authorize sort of a blanket contingency fund for these scope adjustments. So that when they come up, we have the ability to use that contingency to expand the scope for whatever consultant services is needed at that time. Of the 5 contracts that you've approved to date, only one of them had contingency assigned specifically to that contract. That was for $9,750 for G2. So this request that you have in front of you for $100,000 is actually a request for an additional $90,250. And so I think the Mayor Pro Tem is going to ask one of you to offer a resolution that's a little bit different than what is in this memo, so that the number is 90,250 instead of 100,000. And I also want to make sure that you're aware that this contingency fund is only for consultant services contracts. And it can go towards any of the consultant service contracts that are out there currently, as well as any that may be needed in the future. And so this is an amount of money that is specifically identified for consultant services only. Whatever is not used will go towards the construction part of the River Park.
Specifically for the. So I don't like to start, but I'm gonna start. So if we look at what we're approving a $90,000, $250 contingency because we've already approved the other. And it's for any consultant services contracts associated with the River Park project, which includes what we've already approved, those contracts, and any future. Is that just okay?
And the scope of all expenses incurred would have to be eligible for the ARPA grant, correct?
Yes, yes.
Except it might run out.
There was a spreadsheet.
I would assume it would be, I'm assuming we anticipate this contingency being spent before that ARPA grant would expire or run out, correct?
Yes.
Good.
Okay. Because otherwise, if the ARPA grant, we hit the 2.5 million, then that would come back to the city, so.
Yeah. Well, actually, once that 2.5 million is hit, that ends the city's obligation. Whether it you know, whether there's still money exists still on their contracts or not, it then goes to HP.
Any other?
This is basically an administrative efficiency play. This isn't,
It is.
this isn't something that our taxpayers will ever see roll down to them. I think that's, you just want to make sure that that's clear.
Yeah, and
It saves staff having to produce half a dozen memos and it saves council having to review and approve, you know, memos that are, you know, changes of scope that are $5,000 or whatever. So, yeah.
yeah, and my observation is we usually on almost every contract we look at, we have a contingency. Because things happen, you know, it's often capped at 15%. But that's, and on those, except for the one contract, we haven't done it with the ones we've approved to date. So that's actually deviating from our norm to have a contingency. But I like the idea of this because it allows you to move it amongst those projects because you don't know which one's going to have those elevated costs. Eagle comes back and asks for more. They find something they hadn't expect and you don't know. Hopefully it doesn't hit Grisham Metz, for example, landscape as much as the others, but you just don't know. I guess the only thing I would ask, it's a soft ask, but rather than the 15, but if you, the typical 50, because in others, if you hit that 15% contingency, so everything that was in the contract plus the contingency, you'd have to come back to council, right? For, yeah. So that in this case, for if anybody's, I don't know what would be a good number exceeding, whether it be typically 15, but it could be 20, then we be alerted that there is one contract that's eaten up a lot of money, more than we expected.
One of the things.
It wouldn't have to be formally approved, but we would just get notice somehow.
Well, one of the things that I've been trying to include in your packets each time we come to you with a contract is a spreadsheet that shows you how all of the funds are being spent. And so what we'll do is we'll track contingency on that as well. So you'll be able to see where the contingency is assigned to each one of those contracts. And so staff can make sure to provide that to you on a regular basis because this approving of these contracts is going to slow down. But we can keep you appraised by forwarding that spreadsheet to you on a regular basis if you like.
I think it's great. I think this is the second time you've submitted them and it's very helpful.
Great.
Are you still getting quick payment from Wayne County? I was surprised how quick she's, not anymore. Oh, that was just because it was like in a couple of weeks. I'm like, Wayne County's giving us money in 2 weeks turnaround? No. Oh, now it's down to 0. Oh, now we're back to normal. Oh. Okay, and I did do the math. It got shifted a little, but I think the contingent, this only represents about a 13% contingency compared to a normal 15. So it's not even where we usually are. Right. And you met the other thing, you mentioned talking to, like when you see him come in, Samantha with AKT Peerless is our Brownfield rep. She's really good on what should be expected coming out and by the different consultants. Probably not so much the landscape, Grisham Metz, which landscaping, but for all the others. So that's just a suggestion. She's always just a phone call away. And she's been very helpful at Brownfield for the Brownfield Redevelopment Authority. So, and I think she looks them all over anyway.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. At the end of it. Great. Okay. Is it any other questions or comments? Well, I'm going to go to, okay. I'm going to open it for public comment on this contingency approval. None? Going. Yes, no more changing tables. Yes, so, I'm looking for a motion. Oh, and do you have sort of the marked up motion? Anybody have that?
Okay, just the annual.
Yeah, it's little.
I can make that. I move to approve a $90,250 contingency fund for any consultant services contract associated with the River Park project.
Support. I think she had it. She had it.
I'll support it.
Yep.
Okay, we have a motion properly supported. Any discussion? No? Okay. All in favor, say yes.
Yes.
Yes. Any nays? No, oh, I'm a yes. And no, so it's, motion passes, it's unanimous. All right. So that wraps up our regular items on our agenda under new business and gonna move on to council communications.
Do you want me to start it off?
Yeah.
All right, well, I will respond first to Ms. Genetti's question, which I found to be completely reasonable, by the way. So as one of the brownfield reps, the total cost of the daylighting of the river and the brownfield plan associated is 17.78 million. I will note a large portion of that is environmental cleanup, and within the brownfield plan, which we can share, is a detailed breakdown of where that estimate comes from. That is capped. So one important note is if it ends up being 20 million, 22 million, 24 million, that's all on Hunter Pasteur. There's no additional exposure to the city beyond the 17.78. Additionally, the way that's going to work is it's not going to be allocated against the tax revenue from all of our residents. So if you take the new development, as they start to earn, basically tax revenue starts coming in from that, we can capture that as part of the brownfield TIF. And then that's going to repay for that cleanup activity and the approved expenses within the brownfield plan. So those environmental costs, all the cleanup and the daylighting of the river will be basically offset by that tax revenue from the developer. If for some reason that development gets extended out, the tax revenues don't materialize, stories we're told that weren't true, all of the exposure on the back end is also with the developer. So right now it has a phase out plan where that tax capture ends in 2030 and starts to phase out through 2032, where it goes from 90 and ultimately down to 0%. So if the development all of a sudden doesn't finish till 2035 and there isn't enough tax revenue to pay them back that 17.78 million, we're also not exposure on that side. That would come from the developer. So I know that's a lot of very fast said numbers that are very large, but happy to run through additional details on that following. We can do it following. We don't need to.
No, I'm just gonna footnote that it's not Northville city taxpayers.
Oh, that's a really good point.
Okay, so it's all
Yes.
taxing authorities. Okay,
Yes,
so-
that is, thank you. Never mind. That's a good note you were passing me. It is, so that is details. We'll keep going. I'll just keep going into details. So it is an important note that we capture 100% of that tax revenue. Approximately 37% of that would be coming back to the city in a normal environment. So we're actually bringing additional money that would have gone to the state, gone to the county out, and we've got partnerships with them to make sure we can keep that in Northville in order to do this project. One additional note on that has been raised as a question that says, well, what about those tax dollars that would have gone to the schools? They're actually matched. The schools are made whole and trued up. So there's no impact on the schools and the funding that comes there. And we still capture that full amount to repay. So that's a very quick breakdown of how the structure works, but that's the total exposure involved. We tried to create as many covers and protections for the city on that as we can. Since I'm on, I'll give a couple other. One, I'm just going to take this moment. Congratulations to my oldest daughter, Ainsley, who graduated from 8th grade today. And to all of, thank you. And to all of the Northville kids who will be graduating middle and high school in the coming days and weeks. This is a really exciting time for a lot of our families. And I appreciate and respect that. And then also, this is going to sound a little bit similar to my comments during the budget review, but we've got a lot to be excited about and proud about with Northville these days. And so I just wanted to highlight, I mean, we're paying down our debt at a rapid rate. We're making real investments in our infrastructure. We're delivering on goals that we've had as a community for years. I want to say thank you to everyone who continues to challenge us, and I do mean that, as well as to everyone that's working together within the city, within the community, volunteering on task forces to help make the initiatives a reality. Because looking at that budget and looking at the plans and how this is all coming together, it's exciting that we're going to start seeing some of the stuff come to be a reality in the next couple of years.
I'll go next, and just stop me if I'm wrong on this, is to build on what you were saying is there is no threat to the city's solvency, the way the River Park is set up.
Correct.
So, and then there's no threat to tax burden to the basic citizen is what we're saying. So the way that this was constructed and all the work the Brownfield Task Force and you did, make sure that no matter how HP performs, we are not affected as a city with respect to our solvency and our bottom line, which was absolutely critical. And if they fail to perform, then the bond would allow us to finish the park anyway, which is a pretty remarkable arrangement when you think about it. Is that all accurate?
Correct.
And it gets back to what we need to be happy about, what we're celebrating. We're doing some good things here. So as long as we're talking about our daughters, I'll talk about mine. Northville High School Orchestra is new, and Miss Rahap is doing the Lord's work with Northville Orchestra. So my daughter's a viola player, and they went to states last week, and Northville got towards the top in the entire state with the most grades you get is 15 letter grades. They got 15 A pluses and A's. And then they were asked to go to a prestigious state event, and I can't say I know exactly what that is, but what's going on with Northville Orchestra, which is 2 years old. It's not even a full 4-year class has gone through. They love it. And just another thing to celebrate there that teacher has stood up a whole orchestra through the middle school and the high school. She puts in a ton of work, and these kids, we went and saw them at the high school last weekend, and they were absolutely phenomenal. Coffee with council last Saturday, a lot of same faces here, which is good. The whole point of that event was deep diving topics of mind, because with Robert's rules, we can't go back and forth here. Usually we don't. But we went deep on topics. The number one topic was dusk. I asked George to kind of speak on that. So I'm fully on board. I understand what's going on, and we're going to be working with George on what that looks like. A couple other items, we talked water rates. We talked the need to keep the event going. So that was our last formal one. And I think everybody on board, everybody who attends these finds value to them. I think it's incredibly valuable to me to have long form one-on-one discussion, because it can be very frustrating to sit here and try to work through understanding an issue. I'm not saying that we always do. I mean, there's just going to be things that are immutable differences, but as long as we assume positive intent and know that we all love the city, we just maybe disagree on policy and can walk out with free coffee. Thank you, George. Then that's the way to go. So I'll be asking for that, and then maybe throw in a nighttime event for a lot of the families that can't make it. Otherwise was one of the feedback events. And big thank you to Toria. They did a fantastic
Oh, it
job.
was a great
So
venue.
thank you to Ryan there. He said he'd do it again. So that was great.
I like
And I think those were the big things. So with that, so when we're concluded, maybe George can make a few comments on policing and dust, and then what we can expect to see next.
Yep, those were mine for George. I talked to him about them earlier, but again, Northville's growing at a rapid pace. The patience we all have, that's what we need, but also, there's some structure things that need to get, put in place, and I think we're working towards that. So, George.
Oh, well, well, since we're talking about daughters.
Daughter's night.
No.
Sons will get next week.
Well, no, but yeah, this is the nerd. So I think my daughter may be moving into town. I mean, she's lived in Northville her whole life, but will be moving to the city. And I had to give her water system 101 because she has to put in probably a new sewer line. And I had to talk to her about looping systems because where she's going to go is probably going to be all torn up in another 2 years because it's part of that. Anyway, so I'm happy she's there, and then we're like, how bad are the pipes and water system there? And I'm like, anyway, but we love our old town, and we just need to take care of our old pipes. So on that, also coffee with council. I wish I could do it every month, but we've got to take turn.
That's gonna be a thing. I support that.
Anyway, I really like it. And it was really, not that there's, a bad size, but it was just the right size. What is there, 15 to 18 people there right around?
Yep.
And so I think it's the right size for a conversation. I think everybody had a chance to ask a question or bring up a concern that they had that spurred other people to maybe talk about their concerns in the same topic. And I think it's great. We went over our allotted time which was great with me. I could have stayed longer. And Toria was a really nice setup.
Yep. beautiful there.
You know, in terms of being able to, I could see everybody, you know, and then it was easy to, at least, not about me, but I mean, to make sure everybody was trying to keep them all engaged. So I see some of the people here who were there. And I really, I like this, and I think George will soon, the city manager's office will soon be trying to assemble a schedule and then find out throw out dates, figure out who's there, and then they sort of fill in the blanks on who goes where, and then so we look forward, because hopefully we can do it through summer. Unless somebody's opposed to it. Yeah, so I think it's great. And as I brought up then, this was George's idea to have those coffee with councils. Not had done it before, and so thank
Never
you
did
very
before.
much. Yeah. And on that note, one of the main topics at Coffee with Council, but not all, there were other things discussed, but was dust mitigation. And so I know George is gonna speak to that a bit. And then I have a few things to say, but I'd like to hear what George says first.
So I'll start with a couple of things in order here. So bathrooms, adult changing. So this is, if you think about, this is an issue where someone may be a caregiver for an adult who has medical issues or disability, and that person may need personal care that you cannot get to a place of a home or privacy to provide personal care to somebody. So this gives a caregiver of someone with a disability an opportunity to have access to a private space, a place to be able to provide personal care to somebody in the public realm without having to run back to their house to provide care. So that's the advantage of the changing table for adult, and think of it as an area for someone to provide care to someone, a caregiver to provide care to an individual. And it's something that is not nearly common enough because there are many people who are caregivers, and there's, not an availability of that type of facility for people. So it's great for the public to be able to provide that facility to people, hopefully in the future. Police, I'd heard different numbers about how many police officers were out there that day of the groundbreaking. There were 4. All 4 of them were on shift from other responsibilities. They were administrators, and there was the detective, and they were all in uniform to go out there and to assist. Also on Peace Day, it was a similar thing. There were a couple of administrators who are salaried employees, so there wasn't overtime. But if in the event that the city felt that there was an event that we thought we needed additional policing, we certainly could have overtime, and I don't have any objection to that, because the job of the police department is to provide for safety of the community. If there's large-scale events, large-scale gatherings, that's something we do, and that's something our residents would expect. So for instance, the parades require all hands on deck, and we have all of our police officers present, and we pay significant overtime to all of our officers, but that's to keep people safe in large scale events. So that's something that police do. Those 2 events did not require overtime to any extent at all. But it certainly is a situation where we could to provide for the peace and welfare and safety of our residents. Dust, this is a very important issue for people. We have responded by putting the OHM contract in place for soil inspection and soil erosion experts to inspect on a daily basis. It appears from the comments that are kind of distressing to me that there was demolition taking place without that on Saturday, that now we will have to speed up our schedule of continuous on-site inspection and not just have spot inspections, because we also want to look into the Eagle inspector and to hear what happened, because they have been specifically warned not to engage in any active demolition without a water cannon on it. So they were warned that, I believe, on Thursday, and to have that happen on Saturday is kind of distressing. So we've got to figure that out. Yep. That is critical to know, because they should not have been doing that. So we will have inspectors much sooner, full-time basis. And if that can be by the end of the week, it will be or sooner. So that's our goal, to make sure that they are complying with that. And we will also be, we have a building official coming on a full-time basis in 2 weeks, but we will take steps to happen immediately before that if we can. So that's our goal.
Yeah, and I mean, today, there was good news that it looked like today the water truck did not break down, the one water truck, but it's still one water truck. And also they were using the water truck as the cannon on one of the sites where they were doing demo work. So, which is what they're supposed to do, to keep the dust down. versus the ones that are for spraying the road. Remember before? Yeah. So that was good because they frequently didn't do that. But there was multiple demo work areas today and only one truck. And I hope that it's a resident that lives at River and Johnson. So they're right there, right? And they have a demo. I had observed that the big long barns, the ones that's really of concern because they have the large cement blocks. You know, they're all those gray blocks, the big long building, and there's others too, but they're big and long and right along River. The south wall of the south building or barn, most of the block is down. That's the first time. And that's the same area where the guy heard something that sounded like a blast and there was a plume and there was no water mitigation down there. That was not good. So I hope that they share the video with you because I think he happened to be outside. I don't know if he was mowing his lawn or something when it happened. So I hope he shares it. Yeah. But,
Makes good videos.
Oh, anyway, so I hope that's shared with you because that would help with your evidence.
Yep.
But certainly, and this is only the beginning, as you
And I would
know,
like to also
George.
hear who the Eagle inspector was, because I'd like to follow up with them to have.
Oh, that would be
firsthand-
great.
To have firsthand knowledge.
I'll actually, Joe,
If you could send me an email on that, or if Andrew, whoever his contact was, so I can have our inspectors reach out to him directly, but we'll figure that out.
not in charge of inspecting for that particular.
Okay.
He had indicated that he'd been on site. I think Anderson, he had indicated he'd been on site a dozen times prior, but he hadn't went to the city demolition during the process. He's inspector.
Yeah.
And so they prefer to stop by and make a stop visit.
Mhm.
But if he saw active demolition, I just want our inspector to speak to him, so that'd be.
Yeah.
great.
During that process, we were just sitting having a chat.
Yep.
We could hear the noise started back up behind us. He went back and looked and he said, "Oh, okay." So he decided to drive all the way around the center, came all the way back.
Yep.
Shut it down, and then.
Mhm.
We will follow up on that, and we'll also move to speed up the time of continuous inspection.
Yeah, which is a shame but I think if we set these expectations, reasonable expectations early and we enforce it, it'll set a pattern of good behavior going
Yep.
forward. So I'm sorry that we have to get, but it's,
Understandable.
yeah. So
I already had the
George
communication.
he has the
I
communication.
already had
So
the communication. with
So
the-
anyway, keep us apprised. And people that do actually have videos, please do share. If you have our mobile and we can make sure that George gets them for his sharing. So he can move forward. Those are very helpful. And I know that the New Victorian has offered to have a camera. They've got the best view because they can see the whole thing. And, but they've offered to, if the city wants to put a camera up there, that it's fine with them. So I think would be super. So if they say, no, we weren't.
Yep.
You can just say, let's replay that.
I also don't want to go after the fact. We want to have someone there to stop if there's anything happening immediately.
Oh,
So
yeah,
that's
yeah.
our goal at this point.
Right, but it's just a
Good stuff.
fallback, right? So.
And they've been warned by the building inspector.
A professional inspector is critical, but it's also important they know that
Sure.
there's about 6,000 inspectors.
Everyone's
that
watching.
are keeping an eye on.
No one's hiding on the site.
I think we all know what good looks like and it's not there yet.
Okay, so anything else? We're good. Okay. For the good of the order, does anybody?
Motion to adjourn?
Sport.
All right. Do I get to hit this?
All- all-